Hi, my name's Arle. I was supposed to go on a family trip, but somehow my ticket got lost in the system. Turns out it wasn't a glitch, it was a choice. And that wasn't the first time. They made a new group chat, posted beach photos, even gave the gift I sent my father, credit to someone else. Then one night, my phone rang. My dad was having a medical emergency, and the pills were missing. Who took them? The same sister they always protected, no matter how many lines she crossed. Now they're asking me to come home. But what do you say to the people who erased you and only noticed when the chaos turned on them? What would you do? Would you forgive? Or finally let go? I wasn't expecting anything grand, just my name where it should have been. But when I opened my inbox the morning before the trip, the itinerary looked off. 3 tickets confirmed. My name wasn't one of them. I stared at the email for a while, unsure if I was just tired or missing something obvious. Then I checked the flight confirmation I had saved from weeks earlier, booked, paid, and printed. The seat had my name on it then, but the new version, it was gone. I called my mother, kept my voice neutral. "Hey, I think there's a mistake with my ticket." Her tone was casual, clipped. "Oh, sweetie, must be some glitch. Don't worry about it. Maybe it's just not meant to be. You work so much anyway. You should take the weekend for yourself." She didn't ask if I was disappointed. She didn't offer to fix it. She didn't even pretend to sound surprised. I offered to rebook. She brushed it off. "It's just a quick trip. We'll FaceTime you from the beach." My jaw tensed. "So, you're saying, don't come?" "I'm saying enjoy your time. You don't have to force yourself to be part of everything." That was her way of saying, you were never part of this to begin with. I hung up without another word. Then I folded the printed ticket and slipped it into my coat pocket. Not out of hope, but to remember that it existed once. The next morning, I drove myself to the airport anyway. Not to catch the flight, but to say goodbye. To look them in the eye and confirm what I already knew, that they'd made room for someone else. When I reached the gate, they were already there. My mother standing by the kiosk, waving her hand as if hurrying the airline staff. My father looking bored, tapping his foot. And standing next to my sister Jovira was Isolde, her best friend, dressed in matching luggage tags and a sun hat too new to be anything but planned. I stood a few feet away, watching as Jovira leaned into Isolde and whispered something that made them both laugh. I caught just enough to hear, "It's going to be so peaceful without, well, you know who." Isolde giggled. Finally, no tension. I stepped forward. My father saw me first. His smile faltered. "Hey, kiddo, didn't expect you here?" My mother didn't look up. "I came to say goodbye," I said simply. I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging. Just stating facts now. "Oh, that's thoughtful." She turned back to her boarding pass. Jovira flashed a smile as she adjusted her sunglasses. "You know, you didn't have to make the drive all the way. We'll send photos." I didn't respond. I just glanced at the boarding passes. Isolde's name was printed in bold. The same seat that used to belong to me. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. Jovira gathered her bag, looped arms with Isolde, and breezed toward the gate like she'd won something. My parents followed without glancing back. Just before walking through, my mother paused, turned over her shoulder, and said, "Take this weekend for you, honey. You deserve it." Then they disappeared into the tunnel. I stood there long enough to hear the doors close. Passengers gone, gate empty. Only then did I reach into my coat pocket and pull out the printed ticket again. My name still sat there, plain and certain, like it hadn't gotten the message that I was no longer invited. I looked at the name on the terminal monitor, Isolde A, checked in, and felt something inside me go quiet. Not shattered, not furious, just still. I walked back through the terminal, past the smell of overbrewed coffee and TSA announcements, and made it to my car without remembering how. My phone buzzed as I sat behind the wheel. Trip itinerary updated for Isolde A. Not me, never me. I didn't delete the notification. I didn't respond. I just sat with it. And for the first time, I didn't try to make excuses for them. The photo lingered on my screen longer than I'd like to admit. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. It was cropped so tightly, I was barely hanging onto the edge. Literally. A shoulder, half a cheek, a ghost in the corner of my own memory. I tapped the screen, zoomed in, then locked the phone without saving anything. The next morning, I poured myself a half cup of coffee and left it to go cold, again. The kitchen window was fogged from last night's rain. It reminded me of how people write their names on steamed glass and then forget they were ever there when the mist dries. That's what it felt like. My name being written in places, only to be wiped away before it mattered. I checked the group chat out of habit. I wasn't in it anymore. Not archived, not muted. Gone. Instead, a new group popped up in my suggestions, one I wasn't invited to, but could see just enough to get the message. Us three only. The name said it all. Attached was a photo from the resort, Jovira with her oversized sunglasses, Mom holding a frozen margarita, Dad's feet in a pool chair. The caption? Finally, a peaceful trip. No drama, just family. I didn't react. I didn't type. I didn't cry. I took a screenshot for the archive. Then I deleted the app. It wasn't just about being left out. It was the deliberate rewriting of the story, of my place in it, and they weren't subtle anymore. 2 days later, I was working from my kitchen table when a ping from Facebook caught my eye. My father had posted something, a photo taken in the morning light of the beach. He looked relaxed, younger even. His caption read, "Lisa always thinks of the smallest details. Love this gift." He was holding the smartwatch I'd sent him 2 weeks ago, wrapped in silver paper with a card I had handwritten, except that part, my name, was gone. I clicked the photo to zoom in. The handwriting on the card was unmistakably mine. Neat, tight cursive with the looped Y I'd had since high school, but the little folded note that read, "From Arle," had been removed. Tucked away, torn off, replaced? I don't know, but it wasn't there. The comment section was full of praise. "You raised a gem! Lisa is so thoughtful, as always. I hope my daughter remembers me like that someday." I didn't comment. I didn't correct. I just sat with it, like a bad smell you try to ignore by breathing through your mouth. Later that evening, after I closed my laptop, I opened my messages. I typed out a note to my mom. I saw Dad's post. That gift was from me. I stared at it for a minute, then deleted it. There wasn't a point. The real audience wasn't reading anyway. Instead, I reached for the USPS receipt tucked inside a drawer, the one from when I'd mailed the package. Dated, tracked, confirmed, delivered. I folded it neatly, slid it into an envelope labeled Truth Archive, and placed it in the box I was slowly curating beneath my bed. No shouting, no confrontation, just proof. Over the next few days, I stopped reaching out. No texts, no checking in, no family FaceTimes or holiday planning. I started marking those gaps on my calendar, not out of bitterness, but to be honest about what was no longer there. A visual record of absence on Thursday. I was chopping vegetables when my phone buzzed again. A tag notification. Lisa tagged you in a memory. Against better judgment, I tapped it. It was another old photo, this time from a trip to Lake Tahoe 3 summers ago. The image showed Jovira and my parents standing at the edge of the dock. I was in the shot, technically. Again, just an elbow. My face blurred behind the edge of a tree trunk. The caption read, "Throwback to one of our best family getaways. Some things never change." I held the phone, stared at that word. Family. Then I put it down, washed my hands, and turned off the stove. They were right, in a way. Some things don't change. The phone stayed face down on the kitchen counter the rest of the night. I didn't need another memory rewritten by someone else. I'd seen enough versions of myself trimmed from the edge of their stories to know what came next. By morning, the sky had turned that dull Seattle gray. the kind that makes you check your watch at noon because it still feels like dawn. I made coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, I opened my laptop and scrolled through my email, clearing out noise until one subject line stopped me. Final itinerary, Cabo trip, updated by Lisa. I clicked it without hesitation. The email was polished, bullet points, hyperlinked maps, a header image of the resort logo, clean and branded. At the bottom, it read, "Finalized by Lisa for the family." There was no mention of me. No, "Sorry you won't be joining us." No acknowledgement that this was the trip I'd suggested, researched, and nearly booked months ago. I toggled to my old spreadsheet, the one I'd created in early March with flight options, price comparisons, weather forecasts, even dietary notes for Dad's medication. I cross-checked the departure dates. Same resort, same flights, different people. They hadn't just removed me, they'd reauthored the plan and claimed it as her vision. I didn't reply. I didn't forward receipts or past emails. I just sat there with that dull ache behind my eyes, the kind that doesn't come from being forgotten, but from being rewritten. Later that afternoon, I opened an older email chain between me and my parents. Weeks back, I had sent them a full packet of documentation, screenshots of text messages, call recordings, even one voicemail where Lisa had said, half laughing, that I wouldn't even notice if they left her in charge of my whole life. My mother's response had come the next day. "We don't want to stir the pot, honey. Lisa just has her way. Let's not get caught in pettiness." That word, pettiness, had lodged itself somewhere sharp. A dismissal dressed as peacekeeping. What they called not taking sides was, in effect, just protecting the louder voice. Instead of responding, I created a new folder on my desktop. I titled it Trip 2025, Truth Archive. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even sure what I'd use it for. But I knew this much. I needed a place where the actual sequence of things could live. Unedited. Untouched. I began uploading my original itinerary spreadsheet, screenshots of the family chat before I was removed, USPS tracking for the watch I'd mailed Dad, a saved copy of the social media post with Lisa credited, that email from Mom, word for word. Each document went in with quiet precision. I wasn't angry while doing it, just focused. Focused like someone tracing back steps to figure out where they disappeared from their own life. That evening, I went out to walk the block, needing to clear my head. It had rained earlier, so the air carried that wet cement smell, the kind that always made me think of school mornings and second chances. When I got back, I changed into pajamas, made a half-hearted effort at dinner, then sat at my desk and opened the folder again. There was one more thing I wanted to add. From my phone, I uploaded a voice memo saved months ago. It was from a family meeting, casual on the surface, but I'd recorded it after Lisa's tone made my stomach twist. My father's voice came through, clear and unbothered. "Just follow your sister's lead. She knows what works." I paused before clicking save. It wasn't the worst thing he'd ever said to me. It wasn't cruel, or even meant as a jab. But it revealed something truer than he realized. In this family, Lisa didn't just lead, she rewrote, and the rest of them fell in line. I saved the file under Hierarchy MP3. Then I closed the laptop and stood by the window. The rain had returned. This time gentler, steady. Drops trailing down the glass like threads that didn't quite know where to land. If I had followed her lead, maybe I'd have learned how to disappear properly too. I stepped away from the window, the glass now streaked with rain and reflections I didn't want to examine too closely. I turned off the lamp beside my desk and moved to the kitchen without thinking, more out of habit than hunger. But when I opened the drawer to grab a pen, I found something I'd forgotten about. Folded neatly beneath a pile of old receipts and junk mail was an envelope from the year before. Resort stationery from a trip I never took, but apparently helped fund. Tulum. The trip, they said, had gotten too tight to include everyone. I'd believed them. At the time, I even offered to pitch in and told them not to worry about the expense. I assumed the gesture mattered more than the seat on the plane. Now, holding the printed guest invoice in my hand, I felt something snap into place. 3 names. Only 3. All charges split evenly between my father, my mother, and Lisa. My name wasn't missing. It had never been there. I sat down on the edge of my bed with the paper in my lap. No tears, no immediate anger, just the quiet confirmation of a pattern. You don't trip over the same stone for years and keep calling it a fluke. I grabbed a small notebook from the nightstand drawer and flipped to a blank page. With a pen I hadn't used in months, I began jotting dates, trips, events, years where I was busy with work, on a deadline. Probably wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. Excuses handed to me gently but purposefully, and I had swallowed them all. What do you call a family that plans around your absence like it's tradition? I turned the page. Next to a sticky note with an old password, I found a voicemail I'd written down but never erased. Aunt Vera. Her voice from 2 years ago still echoed in my head sometimes, especially late at night when the silence pressed too hard. Baby, I know you love them, but sometimes love makes us blind to being left behind. Call me. I told my mother about it, naively maybe. I thought it would open something between us. Instead, 3 days later, she'd sat me down at brunch, looked me straight in the eye, and said, I don't want you talking to Vera anymore. She stirs things up that don't need stirring. She's not part of what we're building. After that, Vera disappeared from our family group calls. She stopped being copied on holiday emails. Her name never came up again, except in that strange, loaded way people talk about someone who's been quietly cut out. I'd never called her back. Until now. I unlocked my phone and typed her name in the search bar. Her contact popped up, still there like an unopened letter. At the top of our last thread was a message I had typed but never sent. I think I owe you a conversation. I sat with my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I tapped send before I could second guess it. The message vanished into the ether. It was a small act, maybe, but it felt heavier than anything I'd done all week. Later, while folding laundry in the living room, I pulled out a stack of birthday photos I kept in a drawer by the TV. There were maybe 7 or 8 prints, one for each year. My parents insisted on mailing me a card and saying they missed having me around. In each picture, 3 people. Lisa, my mom, my dad. Sometimes a dog that wasn't even ours. I stared at them one by one, scanning the edges for myself, like I was playing hide and seek with my own existence. In none of them was I there, and no one ever asked why that was. I flipped one over and noticed something scribbled on the back in my mother's handwriting. 2020. Just the 3 of us this year, but still a full heart. I set the stack down. There's a specific ache that comes from realizing your absence has been made into a tradition. I looked at the clock. It was nearly 9. Outside, the rain had slowed, replaced by a low fog creeping along the curb. I walked back to the kitchen, made a cup of tea, and sat at the small dining table, tapping my fingers on the wood while the kettle hissed behind me. My phone buzzed. One new message. Vera. I've been waiting for this. I sipped my tea while watching the notification pulse on my screen. Vera's name still sat at the top, unread but seen. I didn't have the energy to open it yet. The weight of everything I hadn't said had taken up so much room. I needed air to move again. So I set the phone face down and stepped out onto the back porch. The wind was light but sharp, the kind that cuts through your sweater and goes straight to your ribs. It woke something in me, reminded me I was still here, still whole, even if parts of me had been edited out of my own life. By the time I came back in, it was close to 8. I tossed my keys on the counter, reheated leftover stir-fry in the microwave, and curled into the couch, remote in one hand, dinner in the other. I wasn't really watching anything, just flicking through channels like I was afraid to sit still too long with my own thoughts. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Ijo Vera is live. At first, I ignored it. Then I clicked. The screen loaded slowly. Spotty resort Wi-Fi always makes for a delay, but when the image cleared, I saw the usual suspects. Lounge chairs, tropical drinks, that yellow and white striped umbrella my dad always rented. Mom was laughing at something off camera. Jovira was front and center, camera tilted up just enough to catch the soft sunset behind her sunglasses. "This trip's been so peaceful," she said into the stream. Her voice carried that bright, curated energy people put on when they know they're being watched. You know, it's amazing how much smoother things go when certain people stay behind. A few comments popped up instantly. "Family time is sacred. Must be nice without the drama." And then the one that hit hardest. "Your sister always brought the mood down. Good for you." I stared at the screen. Unreadable. Jovira gave a small smirk and tapped the heart button under that comment. That was no accident. I didn't say anything, didn't click off. I just hit screen record and let the clip run, saving the whole thing before closing the app. Then I added it to the folder on my laptop. Trip 2025. Truth Archive. New subfolder. Public Remarks. That night, before bed, I got another ping. This time from my bank. Fraud alert. Unusual activity detected. I opened the notification, not in a panic, just mildly annoyed, like dealing with a leaky faucet you've fixed 3 times already. The card in question was the backup credit card I'd co-signed for Lisa 3 years ago. She'd said she needed it for emergencies, which at the time meant groceries and a vet bill. I never fully closed the account because she promised she'd never use it again. Of course, that was before never turned into just this once. The new charge? Hotel upgrades, minibar, spa services, all in Cabo San Lucas. I checked the name on the card, mine. But the user info on file? Lisa's guest. No surprise there. I didn't call her. I didn't call my parents. I logged into the bank app, locked the card, deleted her access, and requested a physical card replacement. Then I made a note of the transactions, printed them to PDF, and dropped them into the same folder. Subfolder, Financial Theft. This wasn't about the money. It was about the pattern. And I wasn't collecting evidence to be petty. I was building a record no one could argue with. The next morning, while making breakfast, I debated whether to tell my parents. I opened a message thread, typed, "You know Lisa's using my card, right?" Then I stared at it. The cursor blinked, like it was waiting to see if I'd finally speak up. I deleted the message. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote, Day 9. No one's asked if I'm okay, but they did spend my money. At least the page would listen. That afternoon, I got a message from my father. "Hey, sweetheart, can you check your card? Something weird happened with the hotel bill." My response was immediate. "No worries, I fixed it." He didn't reply. Not right away, anyway. I went back to my laptop and opened the archive. For a second, I hovered over the folder. I considered renaming it. Not Trip 2025, Truth Archive. Maybe just Proof I Wasn't Crazy. But then I thought better of it. Sometimes fixing things means stopping the people who keep breaking them. The reply never came. Not that night, not the next morning. Just silence on the other end of a thread that used to be filled with family updates and casual emojis. But I'd stopped expecting closure from people who couldn't acknowledge a wound even when it bled in front of them. At 1:12 a.m., my phone rang. I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind running circles around the same 3 sentences I hadn't sent. It was my mother. Her voice was hushed, but not calm, more like controlled panic. "Arle, your father's not well. His chest is tight. He says it feels like before." I sat up straight in bed. "Did he take his medication?" "That's the thing," she said, voice cracking. "We can't find it. Lisa said she packed it, but it's not here. We've looked everywhere." I didn't ask why Lisa was in charge of something that critical. I didn't ask why they didn't double-check, and I sure as hell didn't ask why they were calling me instead of her. Instead, I asked, "Where are you?" "Still at the resort. The closest pharmacy is 2 towns over, and we don't have the prescription. She paused. "Can you help us?" I'll wire you what you need, I said. But this doesn't happen again. She didn't respond to that. I didn't expect her to. I got out of bed, pulled on my hoodie, and sat down at the kitchen table. The glow from the Western Union app illuminated the silence. I typed in the amount, selected Express Transfer, and under Optional Note, I wrote, "Make sure to spell my name right this time." A small jab, but not without purpose. I emailed the resort directly, informing them of the emergency and letting them know a delivery would be coming addressed to me. Not Lisa, not Clyde, me. By the time the confirmation email arrived, it was nearly 2:30 a.m. I closed my laptop and sat for a moment, letting the stillness soak into my spine. No panic, no dramatics, just tired resolve. Around noon the next day, my phone rang again. This time, my mother didn't sound panicked, just hollow. "We found the pills," I waited. They were in Lisa's toiletry bag, under her makeup pouch, tucked in a little zippered compartment, every single bottle. I didn't speak. She filled the silence. I don't know what to say. We asked her why, and she looked at us and said, "Now you know what it feels like to be forgotten." There it was. I didn't react, didn't rage, didn't console. I just listened, letting the words settle like dust after a collapse. "You know," my mother added, her voice thinner now, "your father could have died." "I know," I said simply. She cleared her throat. "Should we talk to her, or should we wait till we're home?" I breathed in slowly. "Wait," I said. "Let her finish the trip she ruined." We hung up shortly after. I sat at the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. Then I opened the Truth Archive again and created a new folder, Endangerment Evidence. Inside, I dropped a typed note with the date and time of both calls, the resort's name, the transaction ID for the emergency wire transfer, and a short summary of the incident. Not because I wanted revenge, but because if something like this ever happened again, I wasn't going to rely on anyone else's memory but my own. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I used to be. I wasn't surprised either. I was just done with pretending that it hadn't become dangerous to believe Lisa wouldn't go that far. That evening, I went for a walk down by Green Lake. It was quiet, cloudy, the kind of gray that turned the water into glass. I watched a little girl throw crackers to the ducks, her father kneeling beside her, pointing out which ones were hungry. It didn't make me wistful. It just made me more certain I would never raise a child in a world where silence was mistaken for grace. By the time I got home, the sun had started to set, bleeding light across my living room floor. I turned on one lamp, made tea, and wrote in my notebook, Day 10. They called when it mattered. Not to Lisa, to me. Let that be the record. It was just past noon when the voicemail came in. I didn't recognize the number at first, probably a Mexican cell or a resort landline, but the transcribed preview told me everything I needed to know. She lost control. The hotel called the police. I listened to the full message in my kitchen, toast untouched on the plate, kettle long since gone cold. My mother's voice trembled, less like panic, more like disbelief. She threw a vase at your father, screamed at the concierge. The hotel staff had to call security. When the police came, she refused to calm down. She cursed at them. They arrested her, Arle. Lisa's in custody. For a second, I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, phone in hand, as her words filled the silence around me. It wasn't shock. It was something slower. Confirmation. Because deep down, I think we'd all known this was coming, just not when, or how. I called back, but no one answered. 10 minutes later, a follow-up message came from Dad's number. We're at the police station now. No clue what happens next. Call you when we're back. He didn't sound angry. He sounded lost. That night, well past midnight, the phone buzzed again. I was sitting on the balcony, watching the city breathe in amber streetlight, my journal open beside me. It was Dad this time. He didn't waste time. She's threatening to go public, he said. She said if we try to discipline her or cut her off financially, She'll tell the world we emotionally abused her as a child, that we neglected her, that we let you bully her. I didn't speak right away. You raised her like she'd never be held accountable for anything, I said. And now, she's just doing what you taught her. He didn't argue. After a pause, he asked, "What do we do?" I gave him the number of a lawyer I knew in Seattle, someone who handled family litigation, restraining orders, things people never thought they'd need until they were desperate for them. "You're going to need protection," I said, "not just for legal reasons, but because I don't think she's finished yet." The line stayed quiet. I imagined him sitting in the hotel room, blinds drawn, air conditioner humming in the background, while the weight of years finally started to sink in. He whispered, "We never thought she'd turn on us." I said nothing. Some truths don't need to be echoed. The following morning, my mom sent a screenshot of a message Lisa had fired off while being held overnight. "If you don't back off, I'll destroy you both. You were never parents to me. You used me to cover for her. You erased me for her sake. Now I'll erase you." There it was. The irony so thick it could smother. The same woman who cut me out of photos, who changed family plans to keep me excluded, who stole my name from gifts I gave, was now claiming she was the one who'd been made invisible. That wasn't anger anymore. That was desperation dressed in righteousness. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the Truth Archive again and added a new folder: Retaliation Tactics. Screenshots, timestamps, voicemail logs. I wasn't trying to win a case. I just needed to remember. Because gaslighting thrives in families that don't write things down. Later that day, while sipping coffee on my balcony, I scrolled through local Mexican news outlets. It didn't take long. There it was. Her mugshot, clear as day, on a page titled "American Tourist Arrested in Cabo Hotel Incident." Hair disheveled, mascara streaked, jaw clenched. She looked nothing like the woman she painted herself to be online. Gone was the influencer glow. Gone was the polished charm. Just a woman whose world had turned on her because the rules she lived by no longer worked. My parents didn't call. Not that day. Not the next. I knew they were reeling, not from the arrest, but from the mirror being held up. This wasn't the end. This wasn't even a chapter closing. It was the moment everything they thought they'd controlled started to collapse in their hands. This wasn't the end of something. It was the unmasking of everything. The news spread faster than I expected. Even from a distance, I could feel the shift, not in words, but in silence. When people go quiet all at once, it's never a good sign. They were back in Fresno before I even got the confirmation text. Lisa had been released, escorted out the back of the hotel, and flown home on the first available flight. No media coverage on the return, just a line in her mother's voice that told me enough. "We're home. We'd like to talk." Lisa is not speaking to us. I stared at the message. No punctuation, not even a greeting. Just exhaustion. Instead of replying right away, I pulled up the Western Union app and copied the transaction ID. Then I typed, "Check with reception. I sent you cab fare home 2 days ago." No follow-up, no questions about Lisa. I had done what I needed to, and I wasn't going to pretend it was for anyone but them. The next afternoon, I got a call from my dad. His voice was tight, like it had been wrapped in hours of trying to stay composed. "She's tearing the place apart," he said. "She broke the living room lamp, threw your mom's phone into the sink, screamed for 2 hours straight." I waited. "She took the car keys, hid the Wi-Fi router, turned off the thermostat. Your mom hasn't slept." There was a long pause before he added, "What are we supposed to do?" I leaned back in my chair. "What are you waiting for?" I asked. No shouting, no emotion, just a line I'd held back for years. That evening, they gave Lisa the ultimatum. 30 days. Move out. No exceptions. No, let's talk it through. No family mediation. The reaction, I'm told, was biblical. She shattered a dish against the wall, screamed something about betrayal, locked herself in the guest room for 48 hours straight. No food, no noise. Then, on the third morning, she left. No tearful goodbye, no suitcase, just her wallet and a rideshare ordered under someone else's name. She didn't slam the door. She didn't need to. The house was different after that. Not peaceful, but unburdened. When Mom called later that week, she sounded unfamiliar, like a person learning how to speak for the first time without being edited mid-sentence. "We're thinking of repainting," she said. "Maybe opening the blinds again. It's strange how much darker a place gets when you think you're keeping it light." I said nothing. "We'd like to see you, maybe come up for a few days." She didn't add the usual, "if you're free," or "if it's not too much trouble." Just a request, not a demand. I didn't smile, I didn't cry. "I'll come," I said. "But I'm not coming home." A beat of silence. "That place doesn't exist anymore." She was quiet. Then came the softest, "Okay." No arguing, no defense. Just a woman who had run out of explanations and was willing to live with that. I didn't buy a ticket right away. I needed time and space. But the door, this time, was mine to open. 3 days later, I got a call from my father. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, he said, "We cleaned out Lisa's room. There was something there, something for you. Maybe she meant it for herself, maybe not. Either way, it's yours now." I didn't ask what it was. I didn't want an explanation. I wanted an ending. I never replied to the voicemail. It wasn't out of spite, exactly. More like inertia, emotional gravity pulling me into silence. The message sat there in my inbox, like a plate of leftovers on the counter. Still present, still recognizable, but no longer urgent. Whatever temperature it had once held was gone. I let it sit. 3 days went by. No follow-up, no second call. Just that one, simple voicemail I refused to play again. Then, on a late Thursday afternoon, as the sky flirted with rain, and the streets outside carried the sounds of kids on bikes and dogs barking at shadows, there was a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but somehow, without knowing, I already knew. When I opened it, I saw them, my parents. No bags, no overnight suitcase, no carefully wrapped token of goodwill from a local shop. They hadn't come bearing olive branches or explanations, just themselves. A little more hunched than I remembered, a little older, a little smaller, like the time since we last saw each other had added weight and taken height. My father gave a half smile and said, "We figured we'd drive up, no pressure." My mother stepped forward, voice soft, "Just a visit." I stepped aside and let them in. Inside, we all settled into something that resembled rhythm. Not comfort, not quite, but familiarity. They looked around and commented on the little things. How the kitchen was the same. How the view from the balcony stretched toward the park like always. My mother asked if she could cook. I didn't say no. My father dried the dishes without being asked. There was no talk of Lisa. No probing questions about the weeks I'd gone silent. Just shared space, warm tea, and conversations trimmed of tension. Pleasant, even. Polite. It wasn't new, but it felt lighter than before. Not forgiveness, but a kind of ceasefire. On the second night, after we finished eating and the leftovers were tucked into containers, my dad wandered toward the bookshelf in the corner. He paused by the framed photographs, mostly snapshots of me with friends from college, a few work events, solo trips to the coast, Oregon, Vancouver. Nothing with family, nothing from before. He didn't say anything right away, just studied the arrangement, as if searching for a hidden note in the background of a photo. Then, without fanfare, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver-edged frame. He turned to me and held it out. "I brought something for you," he said. Inside the frame was a photo. 4 people, standing together on a beach, smiling into the sun, myself included. "It's the first one we printed with all of us," he added. I thought, maybe it's time. I took it and looked at the picture. Really looked. My face was there, clear and centered. All of us in the same frame, like it had always been this way. But I didn't say thank you. Later that night, after the lights in the guest room were off and their soft conversation had faded into sleep, I went to the sideboard near the window and opened a drawer I rarely touched. Under a mess of old takeout menus, spare charger cables, and a tangle of rubber bands, I found another photo. Same beach, same day even, same angle. But only 3 people were visible: Mom, Dad, Lisa. I wasn't in the frame. Not really. But if you looked closely, if you squinted and tilted the photo just right, you could make out a reflection in the lenses of Lisa's sunglasses. A faint silhouette. Me. Maybe I was standing just outside the shot. Maybe someone cropped me out. Or maybe, just maybe, I was never meant to be fully in it in the first place. I placed the 2 photos side by side on the table. One said, "We remember you." The other whispered, "We never did." You can paste someone into a frame, I thought. Photoshop the story however you want. But truth doesn't live in proof. I was always there, just not in the version they wanted to keep. I didn't hang the photo my father gave me. I didn't throw it away either. I placed it carefully in a small box I kept under my desk. The label on the box read, "Proof doesn't change memory." The next morning, just after I finished my coffee, my phone rang. I expected silence, maybe a reminder from the calendar. But it was Aunt Vera. We spoke for nearly an hour, about everything and nothing. Tomato prices, the cat that had started showing up on her porch like clockwork, her mailman who never rang the bell anymore. Not once did she bring up my parents, not directly. But right before we said goodbye, she paused and said, "You don't have to rebuild with them, baby. You just have to build something that doesn't make you shrink." I didn't argue. I didn't dissect the meaning. I just whispered, "I think I already started." That afternoon, while they were getting ready to leave, my mother stood in the living room with her hands folded in front of her. Her eyes landed on the mantel above the fireplace, empty, save for a candle and a small plant. She asked gently, "Why don't you hang the photo?" I smiled. Not cold, not cruel, just tired. "Some things belong in albums," I said, "not altars." She gave a slow nod. Maybe she understood, or maybe she'd simply learned when not to push. They left without fanfare. No tears. No guilt-laced promises. Just the sound of a door clicking closed. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at my phone. Not out of longing, just a pause. A breath. Then I opened the messaging app and created a new group chat. Title: Just Me, Still Enough. There were no messages inside, no icons, no pings, just space. And this time, it was space that belonged to me.